I'm going to introduce Anne Speckhard in a moment. But you should know that I first met Anne in Brussels in 2016 when the airport had been blown up and the metro had been blown up, not far from where you and I had dinner. We were both talking on NBC at that point. And I thought, who is this woman who knows so much about terrorism? And she explained that she'd been, well, you know, talking to a lot of terrorists. And I thought, okay, you don't look like a terrorist, but clearly you talk to a lot of them and learn from them what their stories are and how they feel, what they believe, and how those beliefs can be used to inform the struggle against terrorism. And it seemed like a hugely worthwhile project because so much of the discussion of terrorism going way, way back, long before 9/11, is a discussion of absolutes. You don't understand the people, you brand people as terrorists, you walk away from them, you turn your back on them, you try to kill them, but you don't try to understand them. And you can't ultimately fight them, especially in today's world, especially in a world of social media, unless you do understand them, unless you do listen to them, which is exactly what Anne has been doing and her colleagues have been doing at the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism. She's now going to show us a film. Are you going to show us a film, Anne? That gives an idea of what exactly they have been doing. How many people have you interviewed now? 94. 600 terrorists over the years and 94 from ISIS. Wow, you could have a great cocktail party with all those people. Are any of them out of jail? Some of them must be out of jail now, yeah. Anyway, I won't go on. I'd like to invite Anne up here to tell you firsthand what it is she does and to show you what she does.
So I'll send him his cash payment soon. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Let's see. Could we start the slides, please? So as Chris said, well, number one, we're a group, and I put a number of our names from ICSV up here because it's not just me. I get to talk, and I've maybe been doing this the longest, but there's a number of us at ICSV that are working on this, and you'll see that as we go along. If you could go to the next slide. Oh, I guess I'm in charge of the slides. Let me see. Do you want to move the slides? Go ahead to the next one. So I've interviewed about 600 terrorists over my career. I've been doing this for about 20 years. And if they're dead, suicide terrorists, I interviewed their family members, their close associates, their hostages, sometimes their senders. And as Chris said, I was always trying to understand what puts a person on the terrorist trajectory. And I came up with the idea of what I call the lethal cocktail of terrorism. And there's never just one thing. Well, occasionally there's one thing that puts a person on a terrorist trajectory, but there's a group that's involved. The group has to organize it, has to create a target, has to finance it, has to talk you into it, give you some justification so that you'll jump over a moral barrier. There has to be an ideology. And it's usually for this cause you can do things that you normally wouldn't do. You can go on a subway and blow people up. You can take a knife and stab them. You can take a truck and run them all down. Because for this cause and because of these grievances, it's justified. And of course, we all know that it's never justified. But terrorist groups are very persuasive and argue that. And then there's also social support. We all look around, we probably do this in the room. Look how we're all dressed pretty similarly, right? We all resonate off of other people's judgments of what's appropriate behavior. And terrorists are no different. So when a lot of social support starts rising up in favor of terrorism, people start to think, okay, this is appropriate, this is correct, I can join. And they do. And nowadays, we see that if you have a phone, you have social support. You can be brought into a cell of people very quickly. If they catch you on Twitter, if they catch you on Facebook, wherever you're hanging out virtually, suddenly they can coalesce a whole group around you. And these people can be reflecting to you, yes, taking a truck and running people down in New York is a good idea. In fact, that would be being a servant of Allah. They can, tell you this. And then there's whatever is inside the person. And I'm a psychologist, so I'm always really interested in the psychology of terrorists. And if you're in a conflict zone, it's pretty simple. It's revenge and trauma-driven. And people will go seeking terrorist groups to be equipped to enact their revenge or to escape from their traumas, to get away from PTSD, to say, I've just had enough. Just let me go out as a martyr. If they begin to believe that it is martyrdom to kill other people as you kill yourself. In non-conflict zones, there's at least 50 variables, and I've written a lot on this, and my time's really short, so I can't go into it, but there's anger over geopolitics, a personal search for significance. We all want to be significant. We all want to be recognized. There's wanting purpose, wanting a positive identity, wanting adventure. What's more adventurous than taking off from Brussels and going to Syria? Running away from your problems. All of us at time to time seek a geographic relocation to get away from our problems. Falling in love, that's a real powerful one, actually. Anger over being marginalized or discriminated, that's just some of the possibilities, vulnerabilities, motivations. So if you'd go to the next slide. And sometimes it's real simple. We took this picture off a phone of a Syrian ISIS defector in Turkey. My colleague Ahmet Yalla got this picture. And I don't know if these people joined only for the money, but some people do tell us, I joined for the money. But anyway, we've been looking for a long time at what are the necessary and sufficient components to make a terrorist. But we also have to look at what will unmake a terrorist, what will prevent a terrorist, what can we do? And the ambassador told us exactly. We need to look not at the symptoms, but at the root causes and to begin to address them. If you go to the next slide, please. We've also been working a lot with UN Women, and we have Natasha here to speak a little bit about that. And trying to look at what are the gendered aspects. Why do women get up and travel to Syria? Why do women strap on suicide vests and explode themselves? What are the differences? How are women seduced into a group or coerced into a group? Is it different than how the men are? If you go to the next slide, please. In my view, ISIS has been peddling a utopian dream. And you see on the one list a whole group of grievances: occupation, violence, torture, rape, death. I mean, there are regimes that are torturing, right? I mean, our own country was torturing. We had pictures from Abu Ghraib that proved it. Loss of land and resources, sectarian fighting, corruption, marginalization and discrimination, frustrated aspirations. A lot of people are living with these very real grievances. And their countries aren't doing anything about it. Their governments are failing to address the real things in their lives that are troubling them, or that other people are witnessing, that they're sensitive, they care, they maybe have a bent towards leadership, and they're seeing these things happen to others, and they're upset about it. And they want to know, what can I do? Well, here comes ISIS and tells them, I have an answer for you. And I can give you dignity. I can bestow upon you belonging. I can give you significance, purpose, opportunity. And you can live by Islamic ideals. Of course, we know that's all false. But if you're young, naive, don't know any better, you might believe it. And a lot of this peddling the utopian ideal was over the internet. And it doesn't mean that people get into terrorism only over the internet. All of these things are multi-causal. But if you're hearing this whole thing about there's another way of living, there's a caliphate that's being built, you can be part of it, people will resonate to that. And we saw that. We saw 40,000 fighters go from 120 countries. So when that started up, we started asking ourselves, if you go to the next slide, please, what could we do about that? How could we do what we're doing, already interviewing terrorists, trying to understand their trajectories, how could we take what we're learning and try to use that to do a soft power approach to fight against terrorism? And our answer was, let's take their stories, because we know that people learn by story. Don't you remember in school, when they told you a story, it stuck? And public speakers are always told, tell a story. You know, they won't remember anything you said except the story of the person that you spoke about. Tell something real. Well, these people that have been in ISIS and walked away, that are defectors, returnees, prisoners, if you could get their stories, they're instructive, and they can be cautionary tales. Don't join. It didn't work out so well for me. Don't join. And we know that ISIS especially, but other groups too, were catching people on the internet by putting out this dream and watching, did you retweet it? Did you share it on Facebook? I'm forgetting all the social media things you can do. Did you like? And if you did, I put this big net out, and I can find out who's responding to my materials. Yeah, you know this. And can we do the same thing with counter messaging? So we decided to try, and I'll tell the truth, we're not as good as ISIS. They're really organized. They're really good. They follow you. They follow who follows them. They swarm in on those people, and they try to catch them and try to move them along the terrorist trajectory. But we are good that we go out and capture stories. We get them on video. Zach Badorf is here. He changes our interviews into these amazing products. You're going to see a couple of them tonight. And Ardian, who you met, who hasn't come in yet, because I guess people are still coming late, has traveled to all these different places in the world capturing these stories. And we create counter stories that tell about what motivated me to join a terrorist group, why I joined, what I liked about ISIS in the beginning, how I heard about them, how they recruited me, how I traveled, what happened when I got there, what did they do with me? Did they train me? Did they give me weapons training? Did they give me Sharia training? What did I continue to like? And what did I hate? What made me leave and defect from the group? Or what made me return to my country and maybe still like the group? Or if I got imprisoned, how do I feel about them now? If you go to the next slide. And this is where I really want to thank Qatar, because we have funding from a number of different people, but our main funding right now is from the Embassy of Qatar in the US, and we're very, very grateful for that. And we were doing fine, but now our project is on steroids, and we're very proud of that. So if you go to the next slide, and then I'm going to ask you to come back. Yeah, this one. We have interviewed 94 ISIS cadres, defectors, returnees, prisoners. We've interviewed 10 al-Shabaab, and that's with our Kenyan partners, who you're going to hear from tonight. We've interviewed 25 family members of ISIS, 2 ISIS al-Qaeda ideologues. With Zach's kind help, we've created 79 counter-narratives. Some of them are still in process. And I think it's 60 that are already up on YouTube. And then now if you go back to the last slide, this is our YouTube channel. And we beg people, so any of you that are fluent in other languages, if you'd like to give any of your time to ICSVE, each video is maybe 3 minutes long, and it's got a short little script. And we ask diplomats, people that are able to do it, please can you change this into your language, just by writing. And we get subtitlers so that we have anti-ISIS videos in the same languages that ISIS is recruiting in, which is about 21 languages. And we also create a study guide for every video. Those are still being processed and will be put together into a training manual soon. And we go out and we train teachers, prison workers, police, CVE professionals, how you can use these things. Because we know that people don't only learn by logic. I mean, maybe the people in this room, because you're all accomplished professionals, but a lot of people learn by emotion and emotionally compelling material. And we know that people are on YouTube all the time now. They love to watch film. And that's what we're trying to create, and creating a message where the person tells their narrative. On our study guide, we provide a transcript, we provide discussion questions, we have Islamic scriptures that show what ISIS is claiming, or Al-Shabaab, or whatever the group happens to be, and what the refutations are. So now if you go ahead 2 slides, please. So we've also been very privileged to make country partnerships. So you see Kenya, northern Syria, they call themselves Rojava, the Syrian Democratic Forces, Iraq, Kosovo, Albania, have all let us into their prisons. And we've all been able to interview ISIS prisoners, which has been quite amazing. And we also work with the US, Canada, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, Kyrgyzstan, Thailand, Malaysia, and the EU on distribution, on training, and different ways of working with these videos. So we're managing as a small center to have a global impact, and we hope that we're having success. So if you go ahead to the next slide, please. So the way we measure our success is face-to-face interventions. We held focus groups in Jordan, in Zarqa. That's where Zarqawi was from. If you know who Zarqawi is, he was the head of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. In Kosovo and Central Asia. In US, you're going to hear from Mohammed tonight about the focus groups that he's running with the Somali American community in San Diego. We also train teachers, police, as I've told you. We were really quite amazed when I was speaking in Thailand to have someone raise their hand and say, I really love these videos, they really work. I'm a prevent counselor in London, and I had a 13-year-old that was going to go to Raqqa. And he came for his 3rd interview, and he kept saying, I'm going to go to Raqqa. And the counselor, whose name is Omar, said, I was really scared he was going to go to Raqqa. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I should call the police. But this 3rd session, I decided, I remembered, Anne, about your videos, and I showed him a video of a 13-year-old, and this kid was 13. And it was a kid that had been in ISIS, told his story, we had a video of it. And after the video finished, and you know, it's a little ruffian, so he turned to Omar and he goes, is that for real? And Omar said, yeah, that is a real video, my colleague made it. You know, this is his story, do you want it to be your story? And he said, I'm not going to go. And that's so cool, right? It's only one person, but it's one person turned around. And same thing, we were in prison in Suleimania, Ardian and I, and we were interviewing an ISIS emir. He was responsible for 50 deaths. He'd sent kids with suicide bombs to kill other people. And he started talking about the slaves in ISIS and the slave women and how you can do what you want with them. And I got scared. I don't usually get scared, but I got scared. And I was typing my notes on the computer, and I said, wait a minute. I have 2 ISIS guys that disagree with you. I have them on video. Will you watch their testimonies? And he said, sure. And I thought he was in shackles, and the Peshmerga guy that was translating for us held my computer, and I thought it's going to go flying across the room. And he watched these videos. He got totally engrossed in them. And when he finished watching them, he started saying, we were wrong. He hung his head in shame. He said, you know, we had internal debates about some of these things. We gave a bad face to Islam, what we did. And before he'd been all bravado, really scary guy. And I thought, wow, these work for intervention. So we know they work, and they're being used on 5 continents right now by counselors, police, teachers, CVE professionals, and so on. If you go to the next slide, all I'm going to say is we've got a lot of publications that show our online results. Facebook has partnered with us, and we're very proud of that as well. So we've got these wonderful partners, Qatar and Facebook. And Facebook has allowed us to distribute with ads our videos all around the world. So right now, I think we have 20 campaigns running right now in Kenya, in Iraq, in the Far East, in Kyrgyzstan, in Belgium, in Netherlands. They're in their own languages, and they're coming up on people's Facebook feed. And you know, it's up to them if they click on it or not. But then if they do click on it, they watch this video, which they probably think is an ISIS video because our videos are made to look as though they're from ISIS. They have a picture that's from ISIS propaganda as their identifying screenshot. And they have names that are ambiguous, like the glorious cubs of the caliphate. And, but if they watch it, they're getting a real story. that's a counter-narrative instead of pulling them in. And then please go to the next slide. We recently started, again with Zach's help, something called therealjihad.org, which is a website that has Islamic arguments, so it's ideological arguments, but also stories and all our films, so that they can click at the end of the video and go to The Real Jihad. And you'll hear from our Kenyan colleague about what happened in just only 1 month. And I think we have 14,000 clicks already on the Real Jihad website, and the only way you hear about it is if you watched one of our videos. So people are going looking for more, which is very exciting. So if you would just go to the last slide, I'd like to show you our team members who allow themselves to be shown. We also have other team members who are too afraid. One of them is in Iraq, and so you don't see all the pictures here. We have a wonderful team, really grateful to all of them. And I want to go quickly, so I'm going to show you our latest video. It's a story from our last trip into northern Syria, working with the Syrian Democratic Forces. And they let us in their prisons. We interviewed on that trip, I think it was 7 men, most of them Europeans, and 5 women that had been in ISIS, all Europeans. And this is one of the European women. We renamed her. It's not her real name, but we renamed her Salma. She went naively into ISIS following her father. She's from Belgium. And she thought it was going to be a good thing. She didn't do her research ahead of time. Turned out horrible. And here's her story. If you can play the video, please. Thank you.
My dad, he wanted to live the really Islamic life. My dad came first, and then he called me. He just said, life is better here, you can wear your whole hijab, and we are not oppressed here. Just that my dad said I'm not coming back was enough for me to come, actually. I never watched, and when my dad called me, I tried to watch on YouTube. I looked up like how is life in ISIS. There wasn't really anything on YouTube. And he convinced me to come, so I came. They entered me in a pickup, and they took me to a woman's house. In Bab Limon, I stayed for a week, and then they take me to Raqqa. The Raqqa is like a big house full of women. I told them I have my dad here, and they went up, looked up for him, and they brought him. My husband was a soldier in Iraq. When we got married, he went 3 times. And then he stopped going. He didn't like it anymore. He didn't like the way ISIS thinks. They have a problem in their religion, how they do stuff. Mostly they punish with death. It's the most common punishment. And after mostly 3 months of marriage, I got pregnant. He stopped going to work, and then we tried to get out of ISIS. But so many things happened. It's very difficult to get out. We're gonna cross the border. We went to the last point of last town. The problem is we're a lot, and Free Syrian Army was advancing, and everybody was evacuating from that little town. Us going to there was a little bit suspicious. And when we are going, there is a car of police that comes. They're saying to my dad, why are you taking your family? I was like, oh, just here. He's like, yeah, no, we know. And then they came and took my dad. They left us in a house first. They took my dad to prison. They interrogated him. And then they came and took us. They put us in prison, but then we needed to evacuate Al-Bab, so they evacuated and they took us to Raqqa. They wanted us to put us in a woman's house, but we ran away. When they put my husband and my dad in prison, my dad, because he's older, he just stayed 2 weeks and he got out. But my husband, because he's younger, he stayed a long time. He stayed like almost 6 months. So my dad was like, yeah, no, I'm not staying here, let's go. So we started walking, and then they started shooting on us. They started shooting on us. They killed all the men. He died in front of me. I got a bullet in my back and a bullet other places. They came and interrogated me, like, why do you want to go? You should fear God. And I just said, yeah, a big mistake, just playing the game with them. And then I got out. They put me in a woman's house until my husband got out of prison. 2 months we stayed and we got out. Of course it's hard. You want freedom. You want to go out. It's just psychological. It's difficult. I have a son and I'm pregnant 7 months. But being in prison with your kid is worse, I think, than being in prison alone. Because you see him suffer. He's 1.5 years, so he doesn't really understand. So he thinks it's fun. He goes out. He sits in front of the tent, takes stones and starts throwing on everyone. So it's all fun. But for me, really, just see him like this. He almost needs to go to school. Normally he needs to play with stuff. They can say it's Islam, but it's not really. No, they're bad Muslims. They're not Muslims. Don't even call them Muslims, please. That just gives a bad name to Muslims. When you go to Syria, they hate us. Yeah, they hate them. They hate ISIS. I heard about slaves. I heard about how they treat slaves. Yeah, that was also a reason. That's why I'm saying they're wrong. Because how they treat slaves was not on the Islamic way of treating slaves. Of course I want to go home. I want to go to my mother. My sister got so many kids, I don't even know them. My family doesn't know my care yet. If they put me in prison, that's the consequences of my mistakes, so I will have to live with them. Don't even look up ISIS, forget ISIS.
So that's what we do. And that one's a little bit long, so a lot of them are just 3 minutes, and they're all up on YouTube, so if you want to watch any, and you'll see one more tonight. Thank you.
Well, as Anne would say, wow, that was something. A very convincing counter-narrative, at least to me. I'm sure it would convince many young women who would be thinking of going to join ISIS.